and city council members were part of it and everything else. They said, you know what, why wrap it all up into red tape? Let's just fund it ourselves and do it. And they did it. And some of the innovations, too, that they used for power and other things was brilliant. I thought, wow, this is pretty impressive. I mean, it really is impressive. Too bad you couldn't do that every time and move around city council red tape to get things done that effectively.
Right, and we actually probably will at some point over the course of this next year will evolve to where there will be a lot of that independent action, because the idea that we're all settled with now, which is that government in some way can come to our aid, that there's a monolithic government that can cure everything, that idea will fade. And the first response in the future will be to get it done ourselves, if we're going to get it done at all.
Yes, indeed. All right, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a quick break here. Wow, you know, like I said, I was quite impressed by this bunker. Quite big and could really house people for a while. Something bad happens, even if it's just a tornado, everyone has somewhere to go. Well, if a tornado hit me tomorrow, I wouldn't have anywhere to go, that's for sure. I just have to put my head down and hope for the best. We'll talk about natural disasters when we come back. Stick around. It's Badlands Radio. It's Friday night. I'm your host, Captain Jack.
You're listening to Badlands Radio. And now, once again, your host, Captain Jack.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Here we are, Badlands Radio. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity as well. I wanted to reiterate this. If you would like to get over to the chat room at the CTR network so you can pose questions as they come in that I can field to Clif, feel free to do it. It's contacttalkradio.com. Hop on over there. I believe under the Listen Now, there's a chat room. You can log in. You don't have to sign up for anything. You can create any name you want. Join the chat room right now, and I'll watch closely. Instead of sending me an email and going through that whole process, hop on over to the chat room. It'll go a lot quicker. And I also wanted to say that in light of two things, one, of course, Clif being on here on Friday night, and it being Jimmy's birthday, we got Jimmy a coconut cream pie with candles on the top for his birthday in honor of Clif being on and it being his birthday, which is quite good, by the way. All right, let's get Clif back in. Clif, welcome back.
Thank you much. I wish I had some of that pie.
We'll have to. Well, you know, there's a lady here in town that makes these homemade pies that I'm going to have to send you one of these, because these things are like heaven in a pan. I'm telling you, they are so good. I don't know what she puts in there, if it's some kind of like homemade tequila or something, but you just want to keep having more of her pies, I'm telling you. So, boy. So we have right now, of course, these this natural disaster that just happened, and I know that you and I have talked about earthquakes in the past. Earthquakes, something strange with earthquakes. We talked about the Princeton eggs. The Princeton eggs fascinate me, especially whenever it comes to earthquakes, because before any big one, these things go bright red. Why, we don't know. How does your data compare to with natural disasters? What does it see?
Well, we actually get a sort of an interesting resonance with that, because I think humans are huge antennas for this kind of thing coming out in the future.
Yes.
So we get a lot of information on it. We had so much in the way of earthquake information coming out from midsummer onward, so from about July 15th onward, that there was just no point in our report to discuss about individual earthquakes. They're just going to be so numerous.
Yes.
We do expect maybe 3 or 4 very large damaging earthquakes to hit the west coast of the Americas, both north and south, early next year. And by damaging to the point where that word is going to hang around for months, as though, bridges and roads are down and they may require 8 or 9 months worth of work to repair. That's that sort of level of damage.
Yes. We talk about the coastal events, and a friend of mine had just moved to Florida, as a matter of fact, and I started thinking, I was like, you got to listen to the last broadcast that me and Clif had when he was talking about the coastal events. You may want to double think that. But what I've seen is that the hurricane season hasn't really been that bad, has it?
No. That's sort of to be expected, though. The issue is the following, that regarding our global coastal phenomena that we'd forecast, and that is that it's going to be atypical. We're seeing a lot of it.
Yes.
The events include unexplained 2-foot-high levels of tide increase along the eastern U.S.,
yes.
About, I think, a 3-foot tide increase, which went in an additional 200 miles in the Amazon, again on the eastern side of the continent. On the west, we've actually had water reduction reported in Alaska. The tides are out further than they should be.
That's weird.
It appears a bit lonely. And we've had strange effects along our west coast relative to sea population, in the sense that in Olympia, an area famous for oysters, the small little Olympia oysters here, but not necessarily dealing with those exclusively. We've had I think this is, in some cases, the 4th year we've had oysters not breeding. We've had all kinds of impacts along the coast with strange giant mounds of goo that were floating along Alaska,
yes,
30 miles long.
Yes.
And so the sort of strange effects. On the eastern side of the coast of China, they've also had the unexplained high tides. And so one may say, is it because the planet rotates that direction, that it's sort of like the water piling up or something?
Yes.
And there may well be that sort of an effect. We've also had the Gulf Stream slowing down and in many cases breaking up to the point where it wasn't locatable in some sections, and that's caused weather shifts.
Yes.
We've seen those weather shifts push down more of that energy into the southern hemisphere, and of course that now we've had these huge typhoons that have hit the Philippines and Vietnam, and now another one's about to hit the Philippines.
Yes.
And so while the hurricane season has not been fierce up here, it has just been exceptional in the Pacific.
Right.
The one in Taiwan dumped 2.5 months worth of rain, 100+ inches, in like 4 hours' time. Flash floods in city streets that eroded cement block. It was that fierce. So
yes.
The effects are there. They're just not being ubiquitously felt at the moment.
Right. There's also the jellyfish as well, like off the coast of Florida. There's just a massive amounts of jellyfish like they've never seen before.
Also in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
A huge invasion of Portuguese men of war in ways in levels they've never seen before.
Yes, indeed. I promised that I would try and get as many questions in from listeners out there that I can, and this one comes in from a listener who says, Clif, will we have to worry about our mortgages or IRS payments in 2010 and beyond?
Doesn't seem likely to me. I mean, if we postulate that the dollar will die and the federal government's going to shrink, its ability to tax and form that it's going to take that taxation in seems to be strained at best.
Yes.
So we don't actually look directly for the IRS, but we see the Fed as a component driving our government fading away in the early part of 2010.
Yes.
And I suspect that the IRS and mortgages and that kind of thing will go shortly thereafter.
Yeah, no kidding. I know that whenever it comes to his finances are just like on everybody's minds right now because of all the layoffs and everything else going on. And I've been kind of keeping an eye on the commercial real estate because that bubble hasn't burst yet, and I'm thinking that it's gonna.
Well, there's another issue there too, and it's a horrid one to even contemplate. It's twofold. and we really need to address that for all your listeners, and then a bit of personal advice for them. But here's the thing about commercial real estate. I became aware because I was employed by these large software firms and giant corporations in the early 90s, and I did, for a while, I was doing data analysis and aggregation for them, a la Buckminster Fuller kind of planetary resource aggregation. And I discovered that in the U.S., beginning in 93, we were manufacturing or building retail space, commercial real estate, at 5 times the level of the population growth. And by the time that we hit the real estate bubble here in the early 2000s, that had shot up to 7.5 times the population growth in commercial real estate. So when that bubble goes, the level of impact is going to just be huge relative to the size of what remains, as well as the drain or deflationary component that that's going to have on the country as a whole.
I know that there's a gentleman I run into all the time at the local coffee shop, and he has a store in one of those strip mall locations, and everybody is getting the hell out of them. I mean, those things are usually pretty expensive to begin with. But with everybody going out, it puts pressure on who's left. And he says that, you know, they've kind of raised his rent and done some other things to kind of even make things harder on him. He's fearing that he's going to have to be out too really soon and have to close the doors or find a different location or something. And you're going to start seeing these large, you know, strip malls, these mini strip malls, just empty, just for lease signs all across them. And that's horrible.
Well, it's already happened up here in the Northwest and down in through California.
Yes.
I suspect that it may be your locality that you don't see as much of it as we do.
Yes.
We have areas up here where, for instance, they close a casino that has just recently gone through $5 or $6 million worth of remodel.
Wow.
And it's a giant, big public space, and I don't know how many of the casinos around here will survive. We've had local banks taken over in this process by the what they're calling now cannibalistic corporatism as opposed to capitalism.
Yes.
So the impacts are up here. Probably I think it's that, you know, your towns are smaller and you have less in the way of strip malls to fail in your particular area.
Yeah.
So we've got them up here in vast quantities of emptiness everywhere.
Well, you heard about Detroit. The state of Detroit right now is really interesting. I had someone go through certain sections of Detroit, and large residential areas are just like cordoned off by barbed wire fences, these huge fences, and these private firms are in there managing them, and there's like they're bulldozing these homes, and there's just rubble, and it's like post-apocalyptic type scene. It's really bizarre, but from what I understand, people are saying, well, you might want to have to expect seeing things like that more in more cities.
Well, there's 9 million, statistically there are 9 million empty houses in the U.S., including condos and so on, that are in the process of supposedly being on the market.
Yes.
We find strange things occurring across the planet because it wasn't just the U.S., it was the whole Anglosphere that had this boom relative to housing.
Yes.
So, for instance, there's 3 million overbuilt units on the coast of Spain. Nearly enough, they say, to take all the refugees from the Sudan if they wanted to relocate them.
Oh, wow.
That may be what we're going to have to do just to use these properties up.
Yeah, no
but
kidding.
it's going to get a lot worse as the foreclosure mess continues. And that's something that, for anybody that's listening that's involved in foreclosure, you may really stand a chance of beating in the system now if you're involved with this MERS outfit, this Mortgage Electronic Regulation or Registration System.
Yes.
Because it's been held by the Supreme Court of Kansas as having no standing relative to foreclosure. Now there's an additional wrinkle, and if you go and